Welcome to another edition of Sports Insider. I am Dan Labbe, fresh off of a trip to the Super Bowl. Yeah. Chris Fedor sitting next to me. We've got a packed show for you today. We're going to talk Browns with Mary Kay Cabot. Not much to talk about there.
Nothing.
I don't think.
Nothing happened while I was gone, Dan.
No. Steve Wiltfong will join us from 247sports.com to talk Ohio State recruiting. Joe Vardon will talk LeBron-James and the Cavaliers. And then Bud Shaw's spinoffs are back this week. Yes. He was in this chair last week. Yes. He's back in the Bud Shaw on high chair this week, so we'll do that at the end of the show. But as promised, let's get to it. Let's talk Browns. Mary Kay Cabot joining us. Mary Kay, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How you doing?
All right, Mary Kay. The Browns not doing great. Ray Farmer could be facing a suspension, a loss of draft pick. That one of their first-round picks from last year is in rehab. There's this Jason LaCanfora report that's floating around out there. Let's start with Ray Farmer, though. How high of a draft pick could this team lose if there is, in fact, that penalty for them?
Well, from what I've been hearing, I haven't been, able to really. Well, I may have written this yesterday. I can't remember. I think it would probably be a mid-rounder. I don't think that at this point one of their first-round picks are in jeopardy. I think it's more of a mid-round type of situation. And I think I also mentioned this, that the suspension would probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of like a 3 to 4 game thing. And then, I'm guessing there would also be some kind of a fine for the organization. So it was multiple games, and I'm not exactly sure. I mean, my report initially that I had, when I first wrote about this on January 5th, was that it was the texts were to the sideline. Since then, in Jason LaCanfora's report, he mentions that the texts were going to Dow Logging. Now, he's right up on the press level in the coach's booth, but that doesn't matter. It's still, improper texting.
Mary Kay, why is the NFL cracking down on this kind of thing? Why do they think this is a big deal?
Well, they think anything that impacts the integrity of the game or taints the integrity of the game is a big deal. And they really are cracking down on all of these things right now. They're taking very seriously Noisegate, Deflategate, Textgate. So it comes at a time when I think the NFL is going to want to send a strong message that, it's not going to tolerate those kinds of things or really anything right now. I mean, they're really trying to get a handle on everything, domestic violence, and all the different issues that kind of negatively portrayed the NFL this year. But integrity of the game is huge. It's like number one or number two up there on the agenda right now.
Mary Kay, beyond just the integrity of the game, even if this were okay somehow in the rules of the NFL, it's still a very poor reflection on the structure of this franchise. If you've got the GM texting guys in the booth or texting guys on the sideline, whoever he was texting during the game with in-game advice, you'd like to have a little separation there.
Well, yeah, again, like you said, it's not only is it against the rules, but it's definitely frowned upon by coaches. And I do know for a fact that it was very upsetting to Kyle Shanahan to have these kinds of things going on, and it was a major factor. It was one of the, as Jason pointed out, he did have that 32-point presentation to Mike Pettin on why he wanted out. And, one of those things was, these texts that were going on. And so, yeah, it's not something that you want to do. And, we need to hear from Ray. We need, once all is said and done, we need some kind of an explanation about, why this kind of thing, went on and how it's never going to happen again.
Mary Kay, you said Kyle Shanahan had a problem with it, obviously. I think a lot of people would understand that. And I heard you say that this could be a black mark on the organization. These kinds of things are not something that you want your organization to be associated with. So is there any chance that Ray Farmer loses his job over this?
You know what? I think it would depend on the findings of the report.
Okay.
They do not have the full report yet. If anything, they may have an inkling here or there of what's going on and what the situation is. But just like Arthur Blank mentioned Tuesday to the AP, he doesn't know the full report yet. And so I don't think Jimmy would be able to make a decision until he reads the whole thing. Maybe after that, his mind will change. But I think going into it, I don't think that he wants to disrupt the organization in that way if he doesn't have to. So, I know that they want to stop the revolving door, and, they want to kind of settle things down. So, I don't think he would want, going into this to have to fire his general manager. But if it comes out that, that these things happened over multiple games, then I'm sure Jimmy would at least have to have a discussion about that with someone.
And Mary Kay, the guy that's kind of looking bad in all of this is Jimmy Haslam. It seems like he kind of restructured the organization so there would be more clear lines of authority. And right now it feels like things are a mess.
Well, I've been saying this all along. I do think that that Jimmy kind of stumbled out of the gate in terms of trying to put the organization together. When you first hire Joe Banner and Mike Lombardi to run the whole show, and then you fire them after the first year. Well, those guys put the whole building together. They hired everyone that's basically in that building right now, and they were all meant to function with those guys as their bosses. And then, if you wipe out that tier, and those guys are supposed to report to Jimmy Haslam, well, he's never run a football team before. So I think it was, there was just a leadership void there at the top. And now you've got a building full of people that were, for all intents and purposes, hired by Joe Banner and Mike Lombardi. And, I think Ray was supposed to grow into the job. He was supposed to be groomed for a GM job. Mm-hmm. There was a lot that was thrown at him, just weeks before free agency in the draft. He had $50 million in cap room to spend, 2 first-round picks, 10 overall. And all of a sudden, the 2 people that were in place to run all of that were gone. So I think there have been some issues. But I will say this. I do believe that Jimmy wants to get it right. And I do believe that he wants to do everything he can to win and to have a marquee organization. I don't think that in any way, shape, or form he is okay with any of the things that are happening. He took his top people on a retreat last week. They spent 3 days, all working together and trying to make sure everybody's on the same page with everything. So I think he wants to get it right, but I think just, starting off with what he felt were the wrong people for him has set back the organization for a couple of years.
Mary Kay, obviously you've probably heard it from the fans. There's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of disappointment. They feel like this is rock bottom for this franchise. It's one thing after another. So if you're talking to the fans and you're trying to give them any reason for optimism, any reason for belief that this thing can get turned around, how do they crawl out of this thing?
Well, first of all, I still do think there are plenty of really good people in this organization. Let's start with Mike Pettine. I mean, I think everyone can agree that Mike Pettine is a good football coach. He's a good manager. He hires good people, and he had this team for a long time this year going in the right direction. He preaches mental toughness. He preaches physical toughness, and I think people can feel good about what he brings to the table. So that's the first thing. I mean, Jim O'Neill, I think he's a great defensive coordinator. I think he's a rising star in the NFL, and I think that's a really good thing. I think there are other really good people throughout that organization. Yes, right now they are working through some of their issues and keeping everybody, in the job that they're supposed to do and making sure that everyone knows exactly what their roles are. But, these are good, strong, solid people that are in the building, the Alex Shiners and the Sashi Browns and all the different people that are here. I just think they need to be managed a little bit differently than perhaps that they were last year. The other thing is the defense is good, the offensive line is good, the running game is good. So what they do need is a quarterback, and winning solves everything. Jimmy has said they are on a mission to find a quarterback. I don't think it's going to be easy this year. There's no easy answer. There's nobody sitting around in free agency, waiting to come in and win 10 or 11 games next year. I don't think it's going to be a simple task to achieve, but they're on it. And if they can get that quarterback that can come in here and bring everybody together on that offense, then I think that they can win some football games. So I don't think they're as far away as it seems. I don't think they're in as much turmoil as maybe, well, no, let me not, I don't want to say that. They are in turmoil right now. When you've got your first-round pick in rehab and your number 8 overall pick, no one knows what's going to happen with him. So there are issues. They have to overhaul the draft process. They have to overhaul how they vet players and their personalities. But these are some things they have to do. But I don't think that it's, that all is lost and everything's in shambles and there's no way they can fix it.
All right, Mary Kay, thanks for the time.
Thank you, guys.
All right, that was Mary Kay Cabot, our Browns beat reporter, joining us on Sports Insider. You know, one of the things she said, she kind of singled out Mike Pettin as a bright spot for this team. But I think what a lot of fans are worried about is, look, if this team goes 4-12 next year or 5-11, and let's not forget, they have to go to Seattle next year. They have to go to San Diego next year. They have to go to St. Louis. That's an up-and-coming team. They've got a tougher schedule, a tougher road schedule next year. That's completely realistic. And then you're wondering, is Mike Pettin going to survive that?
Right, especially with an owner like Jimmy Haslam. And I think that's the big wild card, Dan, and I think that's why some people assume that Mike Pettin could be out, Ray Farmer could be out, or changes could be made, because you've got an owner here that's got a history of doing those kinds of things. So many people talk about comparison with Jerry Jones or something along those lines. Jerry Jones was a football guy. He had a football background. Jimmy Haslam's operating this organization, from my standpoint, Dan, like Dan Snyder. And that's not the kind of group that you want to be lumped into.
And for all the criticism of Jerry Jones, how long has he stuck by Tony Romo?
Right.
How long did he stick by Jason Garrett?
Right.
And now they've got a team that's got a real chance to win the NFC next season and maybe go to the Super Bowl.
Right. Meanwhile, the Browns are making sweeping changes.
All right, we are trying to get Steve Wiltfong on from 247sports.com to talk about Ohio State recruiting. We'll also talk to Joe Vardon a little later about the Cavaliers and LeBron-James. A lot of the talk, Chris, for Browns fans has been all this stuff is going down, and the Browns raised season ticket prices, and a lot of fans are ready to shred their invoices and crumple them up and send them away. Do you believe this is the final straw?
I mean, I think fans are very, very frustrated, Dan, and I sense that fans are as frustrated with this team, as angry with this team, as they have been in a long, long time. Yes.
All right, let's go ahead and switch gears. Let's go back to National Signing Day yesterday. We'll bring on from 247sports.com Steve Wiltfong. Steve, how are you?
Doing well. Just landed on an airplane, so I got a bunch of people looking at me.
All right.
Center of attention, Steve. That's not a bad thing.
All right, Steve. You guys have Ohio State as the number 6 class in the country. What is it about their class that you like?
Oh, man, that's a loaded question because there's so many fantastic players in the class. I think, for me, I think that it just begins with the quarterback position. I think that you have outstanding potential in Torrance Gibson and what he brings to the table as an athlete and dynamic playmaker. Played the top level football in the state of Florida, beat 4 teams that won state championships in his senior year alone. So he's a fantastic get. And then, of course, you have Mr. Football from Ohio, Joe Burrow, in the fold, and he's the guy. And when Ohio State was looking for a second quarterback to offer in the class, they scanned the entire country and decided to go on Joe Burrow instead of some other names that maybe had more prominent, were more prominently known. And obviously he backed it up this year with a fantastic senior season. So love the quarterback class. Obviously they're bringing in 5-star outside linebacker Justin Hilliard from Cincinnati, St. Xavier, the top-ranked recruit in the Big Ten this year. And how about that signing day close? Landing top 247 receiver KJ Hill, top 247 offensive tackle Isaiah Prince, to put an exclamation mark on what's a really strong offensive line class, and then keeping the 3 guys in the boat in Gibson, who was looking around, Josh Labbe, who was considering Miami, and then Michael Weber in Michigan went down to the very end.
Stephen, given what you said about the whole quarterback situation and getting Burrow and getting Gibson, given what is already here, and all Buckeye fans know, Braxton Miller, Cardale Jones, J.T. Barrett, and Barrett's going to be around for a little while, are you surprised that Ohio State was able to get a guy like Gibson, 4-star, 5-star, depending on who you ask, and a guy like Burrow?
Hell, I'm surprised the line wasn't longer when you see what the third-string quarterback can do with that coaching staff. instructing them. You know, I mean, guys want to play for a winner. These guys are confident that they can be the next man up. And Bryce Fedora's obviously got just one more year. J.T. Barrett and Cardell Jones aren't going to be there forever.
Steve, when you look at the Big Ten in general, I'm looking at your guys' rankings. You have Ohio State at number 6. You got to go all the way down to number 14 to find Penn State, number 22 to find Michigan State. Not a lot of really great classes coming into the Big Ten this season.
Well, I think a top 25 class is pretty strong, and when you talk about Michigan State, that's typically about where they finish. But we all know that they have that track record for evaluating well and then developing young men, and then they have a strong coaching staff that puts those kids in position to play at a high level. And then Penn State, you know, that was the number 13 class in the country, which I think it was a pretty strong class. And then you had Michigan go through the coaching change, and they were taking a small class regardless. But Michigan's typically going to finish in that top 15 and compete for a top 10 class also. But I guess you're right. I mean, you look at the rankings and you see the SEC dominate the top 10 again. USC, UCLA, and Clemson were also up there with Ohio State, but it was, I think, 6 SEC teams finished in the top 10, or excuse me, 5 to get Florida State up there. But as the Big Ten continues to progress as a league, I think that you will see I think you will see a little improvement. I think Penn State's got a chance to compete for top 10 classes, as does Michigan. But a lot of times with the Big Ten, it's going to come down to evaluating and finding guys that want to play in Big Ten country, because you know, the SEC, those SEC schools are in a warmer area where there's also more recruitable athletes.
Steve, when it comes to Urban Meyer, what is it that you think makes him such a great recruiter?
Well, first of all, he's a Clayton Kershaw recruiter. Some of these head coaches are Mariano Rivera, and some of these head coaches just aren't very good recruiters. But Urban's there from start to finish with these kids, recruiting these kids very hard. But when they have a priority recruit, Urban Meyer is very involved. So Urban Meyer is able to go into Georgia and take a Raekwon McMillan out of there and beat Mark Richt in the SEC schools for the 5-star linebacker. That's not something that a lot of guys are able to do. But the Urban Meyer, I call it the Urban Meyer enterprise, because he demands his staff to be high-level recruiters. So from the coaching staff on down to the off-field guys led by Mark Pantoni, those guys live and breathe recruiting when they're not coaching football. So they're building relationships and doing the extra little things to be in position to recruit at a high level. But Urban Meyer, I mean, it starts at the top. He's very involved in the recruiting process. That's why I think you'll see Penn State continue to recruit well, because James Franklin's a similar recruiter. And quite frankly, I think more Big Ten coaches could be like that, and it would certainly help their final recruiting ranking.
All right, Steve, we appreciate you taking the time. Careful opening up that overhead bin. Things tend to shift around up there.
Guys, I appreciate you having me. Both my ears are popped. I can barely hear you. So I hope that this interview was legit.
It was fine. Thanks a lot, Steve.
You got it.
Hey, take care, fellas. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
All right, that is Steve Wiltfong from 247sports.com, who gave Ohio State the number 6 recruiting class in the country yesterday. Urban Meyer just adding to that national championship team that didn't have a lot of holes to fill to begin with. So you're looking at years down the road here having a strong Buckeyes team.
And by the way, Dan, that ear popping thing, that is the worst on planes. Yeah, that's what I did.
Gum handy.
On my way home, I was chewing gum. I actually napped on the plane, and I woke up and I still had the gum in my mouth. I was ready to go. You can't have those ears popping on the plane, man. It's the worst.
All right, let's bring in Joe Vardon, our Cavaliers and LeBron reporter. Joe, any tips for ear popping when you're flying around the country chasing LeBron James?
I can't report that. You know, so far so good, but we're about to get crazy here with the airplane in a couple months. So I'll check back with you on that.
All right, Joe. The Cavaliers obviously playing very well. They've moved up in the Eastern Conference standings. They're 3 games back of second place now in the Eastern Conference. They're probably not going to catch Atlanta, but if they could get that second seed, you know, that would be enormous. Can they get there?
Oh, yeah, I think they can. I mean, you know, as we've talked about here a bunch of times, the season is so long. There's so many games that there's always time. And what you've seen is sort of a correction in the affirmative for the Cavs. I mean, they had played one of the tougher schedules in the league. They had injuries. They had roster problems. They had internal problems. And then sort of as all of those things went away, their schedule got like crazy easy. And they've just won, you know, as we all know, they've won a bunch of games in a row here, and they've gotten right back into it. They're a much better team. They can compete with anyone. And so when they play some of these tougher games, they've got Toronto, Atlanta. They have a whole Texas trip coming up in March. You know, I expect them to keep their head above water now. And yeah, I mean, 2, 3, 4, somewhere in there. Yeah, absolutely.
Joe, I remember when the Browns got off to a good start, they were 7-4. The question that everybody always asked me, why are the Browns 7-4? How are they 7-4? And I thought it was an easy answer, and I was able to point to the schedule being the easiest schedule in the NFL. Now you look at the Cavs, 11 games in a row. They're moving up the Eastern Conference standings. Why have they been able to turn it around?
Well, I mean, I think it starts with defense. You know, not to kind of fall in line with what LeBron's saying, but I think he's right, and the numbers seem to bear that out. They're just pounding teams right now. The games are not close, and part of that is because they have all this talent on offense, but they're so much different defensively. They're aggressive on the perimeter, and they take chances out there. Those are almost like two different things. I mean, they man up and get into you on the perimeter with the pick and roll, but then they also take chances on passes because they know that Timofey Mozgov is standing there to block your shot. And now, by the way, Kevin Love is also standing there in better position for a rebound. And that has made a huge difference. So I think that's it. That's the first part. The second part is LeBron is not only back, but he has just kind of decided that he's going to be a different player, and his body had something to do with that, but I also think his mindset has changed. That's the second thing. And then the third thing I would say would be the schedule lately. But I put far more stock in the first two things.
Joe, Kyrie-Irving, of course, has been fantastic. You know, most of this season, he had that little bit of a shooting slump kind of in the middle of the season, but he's been fantastic in this winning streak. How much of the LeBron effect is that? Meaning he's just kind of had LeBron around. He's kind of learned how to win, learned how to put a team on his back and carry them like he did against Portland.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has a lot to do with it. And the reason I say that is just because, again, like, Kyrie had a chance when LeBron was out to sort of make this his team for the time being and sort of, you know, assert himself in a way that maybe he could or should, and it just didn't happen. For any number of reasons, it just didn't happen. So then, you know, now Kyrie's back playing with LeBron and also with Timofey, which just gives him a whole bunch of room. And he's fantastic. I mean, there's really no other way you can say it. He's been a tremendous player to watch, certainly over this winning streak.
All right, let's say tomorrow it happens. It would never happen, but let's say it would happen. David Black goes up to LeBron and says, "Hey, big boy, I want you to come off the bench." How do you honestly think, Joe, LeBron responds to that?
You know, that's Chris. I mean, you know, in a way, it's a good question. You know, I mean, I guess he would have to say okay, but of course, that's kind of like, you know, I mean, that's the quote that everyone draws themselves to, just because LeBron's probably the best player in, you know, in the world or whatever right now, and so him saying that, it's like you can set a scene that way. But the most important thing that LeBron James said yesterday was, he's talking about defense, and he says, we are doing what the coaches want us to do. And, you know, whether you're the fan that just loves this team and wants everybody to buy into Blatt, and wants Blatt to get the chance that you feel like he deserves, or you're a media guy and you're just looking for chemistry, however it comes. For LeBron to say that way means a lot of things. It means it wasn't happening before, which we all knew and we all wrote. Nobody wanted to hear it. And that much, much, much more recently, it's beginning to happen. And that's an important thing. It's an important thing for the coach. And it's just another sign that LeBron has decided that this team is going to buy in and just kind of let some of the things that were bothering them individually early on, just put those off to the side. So, you know, we all had our fun yesterday with the LeBron coming off the bench, but it was an important day from the standpoint of where LeBron said this team is right now in terms of how it's responding to the coaching staff. Still didn't mention Blatt by name, but that's kind of me being picky. That was a big thing.
All right, Joe, we appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, Joe Vardon joining us, and now it is time to bring back the second edition of the Bud Shaw spinoffs. He's sitting right over here.
Thanks, guys. Chris just mentioned one of the things I wanted to talk about this week. It's the 5 headlines in the news. The first one being that LeBron-James would be willing to come off the bench. David Blatt, I would like to have your attention, please.
I know how much you like Matthew Dellavedova. Please do not get any ideas, okay? I mean, this is like Gisele Bundchen saying that if it really came down to it, she'd start dating cleveland.com sports writers. I don't think either of those things is ever going to become necessary. Our second headline is Bill Belichick in New England. Robert Kraft is telling us that Bill Belichick's the greatest coach ever, Tom Brady's greatest quarterback ever, and it's not even close. I wonder why he would be saying that, since he's the guy who hired Belichick and whose organization drafted Brady. Does that make Robert Kraft the best owner ever? Possibly. It reminds me that Bill Belichick has also said that Pete Carroll's play call at the end of the Super Bowl was a great call, and he's ripping everybody who was a critic of it. Well, he would have reasons to do that. It's the call that put him in the Super Bowl. Our third headline is Jordan Cameron. Should I call him former tight end, guys?
Yeah.
What do we think? Okay.
Probably.
Wanting out of the mess in Cleveland. Unfortunately, we're pretty sure he's not talking about 15 inches of snow in February when he's talking about the mess. We can debate whether there's, incredible turmoil, whether it's complete dysfunction, whatever you want, you can debate in Berea. But if Ray Farmer, of all people, would text the term functional Browns into his cell phone, I'm pretty sure it autocorrects to Barnum and Bailey. Our fourth headline is about a former Brown. It's been such a bad week that even respected former Browns are making headlines for all the wrong reasons. DeQuell Jackson, of all people, arrested for allegedly assaulting a pizza delivery guy. The only thing I'm surprised at in this story is that given the career trajectory of a certain Colts running back, I'm just surprised that the Trent Richardson wasn't the pizza delivery guy that DeQuell Jackson punched. And finally, our last segment, our last news headline, I like to end these with happy stories, the way they do on the nightly news. This one is about LaTroy Guion facing felony charges. Seems he was driving in Florida recently with a pound of marijuana in his car, a 9mm semi-automatic handgun, and $190,000 in cash. So why is that a happy story? Well, he plays for Green Bay. He doesn't play for the Browns. Guys?
But one of the things I had to think when this Kyle Shanahan thing broke is he's that guy in the office that has to do a PowerPoint for everything. Like, the Browns probably didn't mind letting Mike Pettin is probably sitting there like, really, you did a PowerPoint for this? Yeah, that's fine. You're out. Yeah. No problem.
I was mostly impressed that he kept it to 32 points. I thought that showed great restraint on his part.
I want to know what he led with. Because you got to have the opener where you catch everybody's attention, right?
Yeah.
Well, I would think what he led with is, really? An entire fleet of 5'6" wide receivers? Come on. And you're going to tell me now that you don't think wide receivers even important enough to draft a big-time guy in April? I mean, unbelievable.
And he had that awkward moment, too, where he, double-clicked through a slide. And he's like, he had to, figure out how to go back. He couldn't figure it out, so he had to skip, point number 17, which was probably his best point.
That may be the funniest part of what has not been a very funny week out there. I mean, we all know that the Shanahans have had a lot of drama in the family name and in their departures from organizations. But, I happen to think that he was one of the better coaches they had on staff. And I think the idea that they're just going to be able to plug in some guys now offensively and hit the same stride they had when they were 7-4. I think that's an awful dangerous thought.
I mean, guys, just think about the last couple of years. You went from Norv Turner to Kyle Shanahan to John DeFilippo. That's a huge step back on an offense that needs something. You couldn't really have any semblance of an offense with those guys. And now you're talking about John DeFilippo supposed to find his niche here and find his spark here?
Look, when the smoke clears on all this thing, I'm sure we're going to have Jimmy Haslam sit down and he's going to lecture everyone about this dysfunctional reputation that he'll say the media just keeps spreading and spreading and spreading. And all I would say is let's look again at the coaching hires.
Yeah.
You end up with a rookie offensive coordinator. Maybe a good coach, but he's a rookie, never done it in the league. A rookie quarterbacks coach. Maybe a good quarterbacks coach, never done it in the league. A rookie wide receiver coach who's been a head coach in college but never done it in the league. And the senior assistant, who you would think would be a Dick LeBeau kind of guy, I also don't believe has been a coach in the league. So why is that the case? Is it because these guys were the best candidates, or is it because they're having trouble attracting people because of the instability and the chaos that they're reputed to have?
All right, that'll do it for another edition of Sports Insider. Our thanks to Mary Kay Cabot, Steve Wiltfong, and Joe Vardon for joining us, and of course Bud Shaw doing his weekly spin-offs. We'll be back with you next week at 11:30 with another exciting edition. For Chris Fedor, I'm Dan Labbe. Thanks for watching.